Good morning, students. In the last class, we have started the new lesson, and the name of the lesson is The Dear Departed, Part 1. In that, we have completed some part of the lesson. I think you remember the story till where we have completed. And what were the characters in that story? One is Mrs. Amelia Slater, and one is Mrs. Elizabeth Jordan. Those two are sisters, and one is Henry Slater and one is Ben Jordan. Those two are husbands of Amelia and Elizabeth, and the other is Victoria Slater. She is a girl of 10, Amelia's daughter, isn't it? And one other is Abel Merriweather. He is the father of Amelia and Elizabeth. And we have read where till where means uh, as their father, whose father, Mrs. Slater's father, has died, and they are planning about the bargain between the two sisters for the things which are related to to their father, isn't it? So today we'll be completing the remaining part. Henry, what Henry will be saying, we'll see. Henry, perhaps she's got her eye on the bureau as well. So what Henry is saying is, perhaps she's got her eye on the bureau as well, means as Slater is planning to take all the belongings of her father, and they are thinking if Elizabeth asked about those things, what to answer they were planning, isn't it? So who is Henry? Henry is husband of Slater, isn't it? So he said she has eye on the bureau. Bureau means a writing desk with drawers. So he's saying that she has an eye on the bureau as well. So what will be Mrs. Slater saying? Mrs. Slater say that she's got her eye on the bureau as well. So she'll be so when Mr. Henry say that she has got her eye on the bureau, by listening the word of Henry, Mrs. Slater say that she's got her eye on the bureau as well. Means she's saying that means she is in a uh, question mark, means she is in an exclamation way. She says that means she has got, means she's questioning that even she is also having an eye, means she also want to take that bureau also. In that way she says that. So Mrs. Slater, she has never been here since father brought it. If it was only down here instead of in his room, she'd never guess it wasn't our own. So what she is saying that when father has brought this bureau, from then she didn't visited our house. So if it is in father's room, until it is in father's room, she don't know that bureau belongs to father. So what it is, if it was only down here instead of in his room, she'd never guess it wasn't our own. So if that bureau is in father's room, she think that that bureau belongs to father. If it is in the downstairs, she never guessed that it will be father's. So means Slater will be saying like this. Then Henry, he startled and said, Amelia. And he rises saying Amelia, means as Amelia said that they'll be means moving that bureau from father's room to the downstairs. He got startled by listening the words of Emilia, and he rises up and says, Emilia. Mrs. Slater will say that, Henry, why shouldn't we bring that bureau down here now? We can do it before they come. So Mrs. Slater say that, why don't we bring that bureau down, means down here, means in the downstairs before they come to the home. Who? Elizabeth and Ben. Henry, stupefied, I wouldn't care to. So Henry say that I wouldn't care to, means if they come also he'll not care about that. And Mrs. Slater, don't look so daft. Why not? Daft means stupid or silly. So Mrs. Slater say that you don't look so silly. Why not? Means they have fixed to bring that bureau downstairs. Henry, it doesn't seem delicate somehow. So he says that it doesn't means it doesn't seem delicate, means it is not weak. It is in a good condition only. Mrs. Slater, we could put that shabby old chest of drawers upstairs where the bureau is now. Elizabeth could have that and welcome. And welcome. I have always wanted to get rid of it. So, what Mrs. Slater saying is, instead of that bureau, we can place this shabby old chest of drawers drawers in the place of bureau. Means they have planned to remove that bureau from upstairs, and in the place of that bureau they want to place the shabby old chest of drawers in upstairs. And she says that if Elizabeth want to take that, she can happily take that old chest of drawers. I have always wanted to get rid of it, means she wanted to remove that shabby old chest of drawers, means she don't like that as it is old. Henry, suppose they come when we are doing it, means he was asking his wife if while we are moving this bureau from upstairs to downstairs, by the time if they reach. So Mrs. Slater say that, I'll fasten the front door. Get out, get your coat off. Henry will change it. So when he said that if while we are changing, means while we are moving the bureau from upstairs to downstairs, by the time if they reach, means if they come, what we will do. Then Mrs. Slater says that she'll be fasten, means she'll fasten the front door, means she'll be closing or she'll be locking the front door. And she asked Henry to take off his coat, and she asked Henry to change his coat. So Mrs. Slater goes out to fasten the front door. Henry takes his coat off and Mrs. Slater reappears. So Mrs. Slater, I'll run up and move the chairs out of the way. So after closing the front door, what she do is she says that she will run up and move the chairs out of the way. Means they want to remove that bureau from the room, isn't it? For that. So by the time Victoria appears, and she will be dressing according to her mother's instructions. Victoria, what have you got? What have you got your coat off for, father? So that girl was asking why you have removed your coat. So Henry will be saying that mother and I are going to bring grandfather's bureau down here. So when his daughter asked that why you have removed the coat. Then he is explaining that I and your mother are going to bring grandfather's bureau down. So, Victoria, are you planning to pinch it? Then what Victoria is saying, are you planning to pinch it? Means pinch means steal. So she's saying that, are you planning to steal it? Henry, he got shocked and said, no, my child. Grandpa gave it to your mother before he did. Then, when Victoria said that, are you planning to steal it? Then Henry got shocked and said, no, my child, grandfather has given it to your mother. He said like that. Then Victoria, this morning, means she was questioning, means this morning. Then Henry said, yes. Then Victoria says that, he was drunk this morning. So she is saying that, oh, means he might be drunk, means he might be drunk, means he was drunk this morning, means he was. So Victoria says that, he was drunk this morning. So when listening the words that listening to the words of her father saying that grandfather has given his bureau to her mother in the morning, so she was saying that he might have drunk this morning. Then by the time Mrs. Slater appears carrying a handsome clock under her arm. Mrs. Slater, I thought I'd fetch this down as well. She puts it on the mantelpiece. Our clock's worth, our clock's worth nothing, and this always appealed to me. So when Victoria was talking to her father, by the time Mrs. Slater, she appears carrying a handsome clock under her arm, and she comes and says that, I thought I'd fetch this down as well, and she puts it on the mantelpiece. Mantelpiece means a shelf projecting from the wall over the fireplace. Our clock's worth nothing, and this always appealed to me. So she has brought that clock and she put on the mantelpiece and says that our clock's worth nothing, means their clock worth is nothing, and this was appeal to me, means she wanted to take it. Victoria, that's grandfather's clock. Then as her mother brought that clock and put on the mantelpiece, Victoria says that that's grandfather clock, means this clock is grandfather's. And then Mrs. Slater, be quiet, it's ours now. Come, Henry, lift your end. So, when that Victoria shouted that this clock belongs to father, then Mrs. Slater says to Victoria that, be quiet, it's ours now. Come, Henry, lift your end. So, she scolds Victoria saying that this is ours now and you be quiet, and she called Henry to lift that bureau. Henry and Mrs. Slater, very hot and flushed, staggered in with a pretty old fashioned bureau containing a locked desk. They put it where the chest of drawers was and straightened the ornaments, etc. There is a knock at the door. The knocking is repeated. So, by the time Henry and Mrs. Slater, they were very hot and flushed, staggering in with a, means they are bringing that old fashioned bureau containing a locked desk downstairs, isn't it? So they put it where the chest of drawers was, and they straightened the ornaments, etc. By the time they heard a knock on the door, the knocking is repeated. Victoria ushers in Ben and Mrs. Jordan. The latter is a stout, complacent woman with an irritating air of being always right. She is wearing an outfit of new mourning. Ben is also in complete new mourning. He is rather a jolly little man, but at present trying to adapt himself to be the regrettable occasion. Mrs. Jordan sails into the room and solemnly goes straight to Mrs. Slater and kisses her. The men shake hands. So, when they heard the knocking of the door, Victoria went and opens it, and Ben and Mrs. Jordan has come, and stout and the latter is a stout, co- complacent woman with an irritating air of being always right, and she was wearing an outfit of new mourning, and Ben is also in complete new mourning, and he is rather a jolly little man, but he was trying to adapt himself to the regrettable occasion. And Mrs. Jordan sails into the room, and she solemnly means seriously goes straight to Mrs. Slater and kisses her. And these two men shake their hands. Mrs. Jordan, well, Amelia, and so he's gone at last. So, what Mrs. Jordan will be saying is, well, Amelia, and so he is gone at last. Mrs. Slater, yes, he's gone. He was 72 a fortnight last Sunday. She sniffs back a tear. So when Jordan says that he has gone at last, Mrs. Slater says that yes, he has gone. He was 72 a fortnight last Sunday. So last Sunday he has turned to 72, and she sniffs back a tear. Ben chirpily, now Amelia, you mustn't give away. We have all got to die sometime or other. So when she sniffed a tear means when she was cleaning means as water from her eyes rolled, she was wiping her tears. By seeing that, Ben said, now Amelia, you must give away. We all have got, means we have all got to die sometime or the other. So he is telling to Amelia that we all will be dying one or the other day, so you have to be strong. Mrs. Jordan, and now perhaps you'll tell us all about it. So Mrs. Jordan says that now you have to say what has happened to him. Then Mrs. Slater starts explaining that father had been merry this morning. He went out he went out soon after breakfast to pay his insurance. So she is saying that he was very much active and he went outside, means he went out after taking breakfast to pay his insurance. By listening that word, Ben says that, my word, it's a good thing he did. So he's saying that he has done a good thing. Mrs. Jordan, he always was thoughtful in that way. He was too honorable to have gone without paying his premium. So by listening the word of Ben, Mrs. Jordan say that he was always thoughtful in that way, and he was too honorable to have gone, means without paying his premium. Henry. And when I came in, I found him undressed, sure enough, and sunk in bed. So Henry says that when he went, means when he went into his room, he saw him undressed, sore enough, and snug in the bed. Means he was sleeping in the bed. Mrs. Slater. And when we'd finished dinner, I thought I would take up a bit of something on a tray. He was lying there for all the world as if he was sleeping. So I put the tray down on the bureau, again correctingly herself on the chest of the drawers, and went to wake up. A pause, he was quite cold. So then Mrs. Slater explains that when we had finished our dinner, I thought to take some food for him in a tray. And she was when she went into his room, he was lying there for all the world as if he was asleep. Means he was lying as if he was asleep. So she's saying that I put the tray down on the bureau, and as she said bureau, she corrected herself and said on the chest of drawers, because they have taken that bureau to the downstairs, as she don't want to give that bureau to her sister. So she corrected herself and she said on the chest of drawers, and went to wake him. And she was silent for some time and said he was quite cold. A pause. They wiped their eyes and sniffed back tears. So when they heard all those things, they were means water rolled from their eyes, and they were wiping their eyes and sniffed back their tears. Mrs. Slater, rising briskly at length in a business like tone, well, will you go up and look at him now, or shall we have tea? So, after explaining the situation to their sister, Mrs. Slater, she rising briskly at length, and she in a business like tone, means normally will you have, means in a business like tone, she'll be asking Mrs. Jordan that, well, will you go up and look at him now, or shall we have tea? So Slater asks whether you'll be going up and will you look at our father now, or shall we have tea? Means she'll be asking that, will you take some tea or now, or will you go and see the father now? So we'll be completing the remaining part of the lesson in the next session. I think you have understood the lesson till here. If you have any doubts, you can ask me, means you can message me. Thank you. Have a good day.